Okay, scholars, let's look back at the two objectives that we said we were going to accomplish in our lesson today. We've already accomplished the first one. We've learned about three different kinds of questions that we ask as readers in our Wit and Wisdom lessons. Now let's move on to our second objective. We're going to focus on making observations and asking questions in the book Thank You, Mr. Folker. You'll notice our content framing question at the top here. Throughout the rest of the lesson today, we're going to be focused on thinking about what do I notice and wonder about Thank You, Mr. Folker. To do that, you're going to need your notice and wonder chart in the packet of notes that I sent home with you. Go ahead and take a moment to find that notice and wonder chart now and give me a thumbs up on your screen when you're ready. Great job, scholars. You should have your notice and wonder chart in a pencil or pen, something to write with in front of you. If you have those two things, you're all set to go. When we notice something about a text, we're simply looking at what we see. So for example, if I look at the cover of Thank You, Mr. Folker, I might notice like this. I see a little girl trying to read a book. She's pulling at her hair. She looks really frustrated. When we wonder, we're asking a question. Here's what a wonder might sound like. I wonder why the little girl on the cover of this book looks so sad. There are lots of reasons why we notice and wonder. And like I said before, we're going to be doing this a lot. Here are the big reasons that this really helps us as readers. First, it helps us to organize our thinking. Noticing and wondering is also going to help us look very closely at the text and ask and answer questions about what we read. It's also going to help us find the most important details in a text. The best thing about notice and wonder is that as long as our answers are based in what we see in the text, there are no wrong answers. We're going to give it a try, friends. Here's what I want you to do. In just a moment, I'm going to put a 3-minute timer up on the screen. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to use your notes, your notice and wonder chart that you have in front of you to write down some notices and wonders. You're going to look very carefully at the cover of our book, Thank You, Mr. Folker, right here. And you're simply going to notice and wonder what you see on the cover and what questions you have about what you see, just like I did a second ago. These sentence frames that I have for you are there to help. You could start your notice, for example, as I see and fill in the blank, or I notice and fill in the blank. And you might ask a question like, I wonder who, I wonder what, when, where, why, if, or how, and then fill in the blank. Scholars, you do not have to use all of these sentence frames. In these 3 minutes, I want you to try to write at least one notice and at least one wonder. And if you have time left, you can write more. Your 3 minutes is going to start right now, scholars. I'll see you back in 3 minutes to share out your notice and wonders. Great job noticing and wondering, friends. Give me a thumbs up if you were able to do at least one notice and at least one wonder. Good, so-and-so. Good, so-and-so. Awesome job, scholars. You worked really hard. I want to hear your thinking now, and I want you to listen to the thinking of your classmates. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're ready to share. And as you share, I'm going to type in what you share with us in our notice and wonder box here. Good. How many other scholars notice that the little girl is sad? Give me a shake or a thumbs up if you notice the little girl is sad. Great noticing, so-and-so. I wonder who the man is. That's a great wonder. I see some agreement. Other people wondered that too. And I would continue adding here for what scholars are sharing. Nice job, scholars. As we continue to read, or as we start to read rather, and thank you, Mr. Thalker, I want you to continue to think about, what do I notice and wonder about this book? Okay, we're going to read a few pages and then I'm going to stop and you're going to have a chance to share out your noticing and wonderings. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Thalker. To George Felker, the real Mr. Thalker, you will forever be my hero. The grandpa held the jar of honey so that all the family could see, then dipped a ladle into it and drizzled honey on the cover of a small book. The little girl had just turned 5. "Stand up, little one," he cooed. "I did this for your mother, your uncles, your older brother, and now you." Then he handed the book to her. "Taste." She dipped her finger into the honey and put it into her mouth. "What is that taste?" the grandma asked. The little girl answered, "Sweet." Then all of the family said in a single voice, "Yes, and so is knowledge. But knowledge is like the bee that made that sweet honey. You have to chase it through the pages of a book." The little girl knew that the promise to read was at last hers. Soon she was going to learn to read. Trisha, the littlest girl in the family, grew up loving books. Her school teacher mother read to her every night. Her red-headed brother brought his books home from school and shared them. And whenever she visited the family farm, her grandfather or grandmother read to her by the stone fireplace. When she turned 5 and went to kindergarten, most of all she hoped to read. Each day she saw the kids in the first grade across the hall reading, and before the year was over, some of the kids in her own class began to read. Not Trisha. Still, she loved being at school because she could draw. The other kids would crowd around her and watch her do her magic with the crayons. "In first grade you'll learn to read," her brother said. In first grade, Trisha sat in a circle with the other kids. They were all holding Our Neighborhood, their first reader, sounding out letters and words. They'd say b, boy, and ook. Look! The teacher smiled at them when they put all the sounds together and got a word right. But when Trisha looked at a page, all she saw were wiggly shapes, and when she tried to sound out words, the other kids laughed at her. "Trisha, what are you looking at in that book?" they'd say. "I'm reading," she'd say back to them. But her teacher would move on to the next person. Always when it was her turn to read, her teacher had to help her with every single word. And while the other kids moved up to the second reader and third reader, she stayed alone in Our Neighborhood. Trisha felt different. She began to feel dumb.